We have very increased complexity.
Yeah, you have complexity, but you have money for stock buybacks by the billions, and you guys became billionaires. That doesn't seem too complex to me.
Senator Bernie Sanders put Moderna CEO Stéphane Bancel on the hot seat today over his planned price hike of the COVID-19 vaccine. So Moderna is planning to quadruple the price of their vaccine, despite the fact that their vaccine was created in collaboration with the U.S. government under Operation Warp Speed. So I'm going to have 3 clips to share with you. And near the end of the video, I have a very specific criticism that I have not seen anyone else make. And it's one that I think should be discussed a lot more going up to the election in 2024. But first here, let me start with the first clip, which is going to feature Bernie Sanders and the CEO. He introed the live stream here on Twitter by saying taxpayers spent billions to develop a COVID vaccine. Moderna is thanking them by quadrupling the price of the shot. That is unacceptable corporate greed. Moderna CEO is testifying now in front of the HELP committee, which, by the way, is Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So here is the first clip.
We have no transparency in pricing. It is a totally insane situation. Everybody pays a different price. The United States government helped you develop that vaccine. It is a huge consumer. Are you prepared to substantially charge less for the vaccine to the United States government and our agencies?
Given the situation at hand, Mr. Chairman, we have no idea of the volume that we need this year. We have very increased complexity.
Yeah, you have complexity, but you have money for stock buybacks by the billions, and you guys became billionaires. That doesn't seem too complex to me. Let me ask you this question at least. The United States pays, the people in our country pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs in general, something this committee will work on. Will you at least tell us today that the price you are charging for the vaccine will be lower than what other countries around the world are paying? Or once again, we're going to pay the highest prices?
So, Mr. Chairman, the price will depend on the value in each country. The cost of healthcare is different in each country.
That's not the answer. That's a whole, all right. I'm asking you a simple question. Your vaccine was developed with the help of the United States government. I am asking you whether or not we're going to continue to pay the highest prices in the world for that vaccine. I understand everything is complex, but I also understand you have money for stock buybacks and exorbitant compensation packages for yourself. Will you at least tell the taxpayers of this country that the price we pay for the vaccine will be less than other countries?
I cannot say that the price will be lower than other countries.
All right, so I got a few things to comment on here, and of course I'll get to 2 more clips. But the first thing that, I'm laughing watching that clip because there's a point where the CEO gives his BS answer, and then Bernie interjects to say that's a whole, and he cuts himself off, but he wants to say that's a whole lot of BS. But he controls himself there, even though I don't think he needs to. He should let loose sometimes. But so a couple of things. On the stock buybacks, we're going to get to more details in the next clip, which goes over just how Moderna as a company, how much help they received from the U.S. government and what they are doing with all their money now. So wait for that in the next clip. But on the CEO not committing to lowering the price in America, of course, why would he? This is where the guardrail, America is the place where corporations go to make the most amount of money possible because the guardrails are completely off. There are very little restrictions on massive corporations in the U.S. compared to other countries. He has no incentive to put people over profit. The only way to control these companies is by having proper regulations in place. So even, apart from anything else, it's worth noting here that you can't shame these people into doing the right thing. You have to make it illegal for them to do what they are doing now, and only make it possible for them to make as much to make the money that they do make under certain restrictions that still ensure that people are able to get the medicine they need. And even apart from all that, healthcare should not, the profit motive should be completely out of healthcare. I mean, that's again kind of a separate discussion, even though not really. It is part of the discussion. But the idea that there is a billionaire now because of a vaccine, does he deserve to have a, do the people that made these vaccines, do they deserve to have a good life? Of course. Do they need billions of dollars while people can't afford the medicine that they created? No, that doesn't make any sense. And I hope we can all agree on that. But let me, before I get to the next clip, this is a bit of the information around how much help Moderna got from the U.S. government. So this article from healthaffairs.org, where they're arguing that President Biden already has the COVID vaccine recipe and he should share it. So from their perspective, he already has the ability to do this. But they write here, how did the HHS, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, come to hold vital information on Moderna's vaccine recipe and the legal right to share it? HHS invested more than $1 billion in the development of Moderna, quote unquote, vaccine, and its scientists were involved at every step of the way. One of HHS's constituent agencies, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, co-invented the vaccine with Moderna. HHS paid for all and ran many of the clinical trials that proved the vaccine is safe and effective. The HHS funded Moderna's scale-up and scale-out of manufacturing. As Monsef Slaoui, former head of Operation Warp Speed, said last year, HHS held Moderna by the hand on a daily basis throughout the entire process. And now Moderna turns around and wants to quadruple the price of the vaccine. Again, because they can. Which we'll get to at the end. My criticism that has not been, as far as I've seen, has not been mentioned by anyone else. But let me get to the next clip here. So this is going to be, let's see him here. Here he is. Dr. Christopher Morton. So he is a Columbia Law School professor trained as an organic chemist and a leading voice on equitable access to medicine. And he was one of the witnesses here during this hearing.
Moderna has proposed massive price increases from $20 or $30 a dose to $110 or even $130, though each dose costs less than $3 to make. Higher prices mean higher insurance costs, including higher Medicare premiums. It was the U.S. government, the American taxpayer, that spent billions. It was government scientists that toiled alongside Moderna's. We designed and ran Moderna's early clinical trials. We gave Moderna money and resources to expand its manufacturing. The National Institutes of Health was so integral that it aptly named the vaccine the NIH Moderna vaccine, built on over a decade of pioneering research into coronaviruses at NIH. To justify price increases, Moderna also points to $4.5 billion in R&D commitments this year. But $4.5 billion is easily doable for this company. In 2021 and 22, Moderna made over $20 billion in profits. The company has been so spectacularly successful that many of its executives and early investors became billionaires, including Mr. Bancel. As I speak right now, Mr. Bancel's net worth is reportedly about $4.7 billion, meaning he might be rich enough to fund Moderna's entire 2023 R&D expenditure out of his own pocket. In 2022, Moderna spent $3.3 billion on stock buybacks to enrich Mr. Bancel and other shareholders. That's as much as the company spent on R&D last year.
All right, so a lot of information there to help you understand just how much help they got from the U.S. government to develop this vaccine. And also, I mean, the big giveaway there is they spent as much on stock buybacks to enrich their own shareholders. That is the only benefit for them. The only reason to do a stock buyback is to enrich your own shareholders. They did that. They spent as much on that as they did on research and development. Like, this is, and by the way, I watched a lot of this hearing. Some of the Republican senators, like the defense they had of Moderna and this corporate greed, this big pharma greed, is just incredible. And most of their supporters are not going to see it. They don't watch this. Most people don't watch this stuff. But, you know, if there's enough interest, I would do a separate video on all that crap, because just seeing people like Mitt Romney and everyone else up there on the right, they defend this amount of greed by saying, well, they've earned it. They put this investment in, even though the U.S. government, again, held their hand throughout the entire process of making the vaccine. They put this investment in and they made this vaccine. And now, because interest is waning a little bit into the vaccines, or it's not as big of an issue as it once was, now is the time for them to strike and make their money. Let me show you how the media reports on Moderna's sliding profits. All right, that's how they're framing this now. So this is a recent headline just last month. Sliding vaccine sales, new costs, squeeze Moderna fourth quarter profits. Oh, Moderna's being squeezed, barely getting by. What are they making in profit? Like, I don't know, 50 grand? I mean, it's a big company, but they're barely getting by. Their profit fell to $1.46 billion. This is Moderna being squeezed. $1.46 billion in the final quarter of 2022. How can you frame this as Moderna being squeezed? Being squeezed is like barely breaking even. 1.46 billion in profit is not being squeezed, especially when you spend, what was it, $3 billion on stock buybacks, as much as you spent on research and development. You can't then say they're being squeezed when they're putting their money into stock buybacks. And again, this is AP. This is not Fox News. This is the straight news agency, AP News. Let me get to the last clip here, and then I'll get to my very specific criticism that I have not seen addressed. But here is Bernie making a very important point.
Jonas Salk, you're familiar with Jonas Salk, invented polio. Did not make billions for his invention. In fact, he gave it away. And he said, I'm so proud to have created this vaccine to save lives. Alexander Fleming developed penicillin, a huge advance for medicine, saved, millions of lives? Frederick Banting sold his intellectual property for $1 for insulin. All right. What do you think about those guys and those scientists who said, you know what? Our function in life is to create wonderful drugs that will ease human suffering and save lives, not to become excessively rich. Do you think they were crazy?
I think what they did was very noble. I think what we have to do is to invest in the technology. If we didn't have a technology when the pandemic happened, there would have been no Moderna vaccine, Mr. Chairman.
Look, we all agree that we need the technology, but what I am asking you, and some of my friends here are saying, is that the only thing that motivates you is to become a billionaire.
That's not true.
All right, but then can we have a science where people get paid well? I have no problem with Moderna making money, but you're hearing here massive cash paybacks, you becoming a multi-billionaire. Should we develop a counterculture, perhaps, which says your motive is not just making billions, but developing all of the drugs we need for the terrible diseases that this world faces? You can come up with all the great drugs in the world, we appreciate that, but if people can't access them, or they go broke, or they go bankrupt having to buy them, it doesn't mean anything to those people. And certainly, by the way, we're talking about America, the wealthiest country on earth. What about Africa and poor people around the world? Should they die because they cannot afford that prescription drug?
All right, so I just want to point out that that entire section there is about 10 minutes long, and it's a fantastic watch. I had, while watching this, I was recording the screen and got like 40 minutes of video, and I had to figure out how to cut this down into a proper explanation of the entire thing. There's a lot of good stuff on the cutting room floor. I will link to the Yahoo News feed, since that one is still up. You can watch. Most of you aren't going to do this, but if you want to watch, 3 hours of this, you can go watch that. It's, again, good moments there. At least check out the Bernie Sanders portions if you want. Really good stuff. But this is my criticism that I have not seen anyone else address. All right. It has to do with the Operation Warp Speed contracts. This is what helped Moderna make this vaccine, this investment, this collaboration with the U.S. government. Why? And by the way, this is under the Trump administration, so Trump did this. Why was it not written to the contract that, hey, we are putting this massive investment into these vaccines, the U.S. government should own these vaccines, at least be co-owners, be able to control what happens with this technology, with these patents. So this is a very, I think, not only accurate, but effective criticism of Trump. Because, Trump, again, assuming he wins the general, and I think, not the general, assuming he wins the primary, and I think he will, if he's not, behind bars, and I don't think he will be. But at some point, when trying to, appeal to a large swath of voters, I'm sure he's going to mention how, we had Operation Warp Speed and we made these vaccines. The correct retort to that is, yeah, and you gave them all away, allowing these massive corporations like Moderna to just squeeze the American people by quadrupling the price of the vaccine. There has to be a criticism there, because ultimately this is the problem, is the lack of government control, the lack of regulation. This is the issue. Again, you're not going to shame these people into doing the right thing. There has to be proper controls over how their business operates. If you're going to put billions of dollars into this, the U.S. government has to be able to benefit. U.S. taxpayers have to be able to benefit, not just from the vaccine itself, but be able to actually get the vaccine once it's under the control of a company like Moderna, who wants to quadruple the price. Again, a larger critique here is that the profit motive should be completely out of the healthcare system, and that is something that is more of, I think, a long-term goal for most people. But at the very least, if you're going to do a contract like this, or at least operate within this system that currently operates, there has to be more control over these massive corporations by the U.S. government.